Hello, incredible story enthusiasts, and welcome to Tempo Stories Hub. Get ready to dive into a tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and resilience that starts with the shattering of a perfect illusion. Before we delve into the story, take a second to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss one of our dramatic episodes. Now, tell me in the comments below, where are you watching this story unfold from? I love seeing our community grow across the globe. Today, we step into the beautifully crafted, yet fatally flawed world of Clara and Marcus, a couple celebrating 10 years of marriage, a marriage built on secrets about to explode. This is the beginning of a saga where trust is broken by the person closest to the wife's heart. Let the drama begin. The anniversary dinner was an orchestra of lies. Clara smiled across the linen-draped table at her husband, Marcus, raising her crystal flute filled with a celebratory Pinot Noir. Her smile, perfected over 10 years of marriage, was bright and unblemished, yet inside, a small, cold splinter of unease had been digging deeper into her soul with every passing month. "To 10 years, darling," she said, her voice lilting, deliberately ignoring the subtle tremor in her hand. "To us," Marcus replied, his eyes crinkling at the corners in that charming, easy way that had first captivated her. He was successful, handsome, and attentive, or at least he had been. Tonight, however, his attentiveness felt rehearsed, like a scene in a play he was tired of performing. He complimented her dress, he ordered her favorite dessert, and he kept his phone face down on the table, a gesture he'd only started practicing a few weeks ago, right around the time he'd started taking more late meetings, and coming home smelling vaguely of floral perfume that was definitely not hers. Clara traced the rim of her glass with her finger, her mind replaying the same loop of circumstantial evidence. The way he now flinched as she reached for his coat pocket, the abrupt change in his Spotify playlist from classic rock to soft, modern indie, the new, fervent enthusiasm with which he insisted on walking their Labrador, Leo, alone every night after 9. Each incident on its own was nothing, but pieced together, they formed a shadow, a creeping darkness she was too afraid to illuminate. The centerpiece of this entire, crushing deception, the one she couldn't bring herself to confront, was Sarah. Sarah was Clara's best friend. They had shared everything since high school, prom dresses, heartbreak apartments, and the excruciating pain of Clara's 3 miscarriages. Sarah was the godmother of the children they still hoped to have. She was family, the loud, fiercely loyal sister Clara never had. Sarah had been there, laughing and crying, through every milestone of Clara and Marcus's relationship, which made the scenario Clara's intuition kept screaming at her almost impossible to comprehend. It was Sarah's perfume. Clara realized with a sickening drop in her stomach that Marcus had been carrying home. Sarah wore a distinctive sandalwood and peony scent, expensive, unforgettable, and entirely unique to her. A week ago, Clara had gone to Sarah's apartment to drop off a new book. Sarah hadn't answered the door, claiming later she had been in the shower with headphones on. But as Clara was leaving the building, she had seen Marcus's sleek, black sedan, the one with the personalized plates, parked 2 blocks away in a dimly lit alley, tucked against a brick wall like a guilty secret. He had always been so particular about parking closer to the curb. The thought, like a lightning strike, forced a gasp of air from her lungs. Marcus, startled, lowered his wine glass. "Are you all right, love? You look pale." "Fine, just a little winded," Clara lied, forcing her smile back into place. The lobster was very rich. She looked at her husband, really looked at him. His tie was loosened just so, his hair meticulously styled, the faint, lingering scent of sandalwood now seeming to hover around him like a judgment. He was a master of control, but she knew his tells. The tiny pulse that hammered visibly beneath his left jaw when he was stressed. The way he avoided deep, sustained eye contact. Tonight, the pulse was a drumbeat, and his gaze skittered everywhere but directly into hers. "He's not looking at me because he's seeing her," a voice shrieked in Clara's mind, so loud she almost wondered if she'd spoken aloud. The tension became a physical entity in the elegant, quiet restaurant. Clara wanted to scream the question, to shatter the crystal and ruin the illusion, but she couldn't. Not here. Not yet. She needed proof. She needed something undeniable to justify the destruction of her entire life. We should invite Sarah over this weekend, Clara suggested, her tone light, almost manipulative in its innocent cheerfulness. She watched Marcus's reaction with the precision of a predator. Marcus stiffened. The movement so slight, only a wife who knew his body language better than her own could catch it. He fiddled with the bread basket. Sarah? I don't know. Darling. She's been so busy with her gallery exhibition. Maybe next week? I was thinking we could just have a quiet night in, just the two of us. He shot her a look of earnest tenderness that was entirely hollow. He needs time to warn her, Clara thought, her heart turning to ice. He needs to coordinate their lie. The silence that followed stretched out, thin and brittle. It was in this charged silence that Clara made her decision. She would stop being the passive wife, the one who accepted the convenient excuses. She would become the investigator. Later that night, in the sterile comfort of their sprawling bedroom, Marcus quickly feigned exhaustion, turning his back to her almost before his head hit the pillow. Clara waited, listening to the regulated rhythm of his breathing, the soft click of the digital clock turning 1 a.m. When she was sure he was deeply asleep, or performing the deep sleep he was suddenly so good at, she slid out of bed. Her feet barely made a sound on the hardwood floor as she crept into his office. The air smelled of polished leather and his sharp, masculine cologne, a scent that now felt tainted. Her target was the antique cherrywood desk, locked by a small silver key she knew he kept in the watch compartment of his bedside drawer. In under a minute, she was back, the small key cool in her hand. She heard her own breath hitch as she turned the key in the lock. The desk drawer slid open with a hushed, ominous whisper. Inside, beneath a stack of innocuous financial statements, her fingers brushed against something small, smooth, and familiar. She pulled it out, her eyes widening in the dim moonlight spilling through the window. It wasn't a love letter or a receipt for jewelry. It was a single silver locket, one that Clara recognized instantly. She had given it to Sarah on her 30th birthday. Engraved on the back in a delicate script were the initials, C+S. The initials, meant to signify Clara and Sarah, were now an agonizingly clear cipher for something else entirely. The chain was broken, carelessly snapped, and nestled inside the locket, where a picture of Clara and Sarah should have been, was a grainy, recent photo of Marcus and Sarah, laughing, pressed close together, their heads tilted in intimate conspiracy. The sound that escaped Clara was not a scream or a sob, but choked, wounded animal noise. The splinter of unease was gone, replaced by a devastating, burning certainty. The facade had not just cracked, it had exploded. Clara did not confront him immediately. The locket, cool and heavy in her palm, was the anchor that kept her from dissolving entirely. She placed it back in the drawer, meticulously relocking the desk, and creeping back to bed. Marcus's even breathing was a new source of profound offense, a steady sound of peace he did not deserve. She lay rigid, eyes fixed on the dark ceiling, waiting for dawn to grant her the strength required to ignite the explosion she knew was coming. When the alarm finally sounded at 6:30 a.m., signaling the start of a Tuesday that would define the rest of her life, Clara was already fully dressed in a crisp white shirt and tailored black trousers, the armor of a professional who was about to execute a high-stakes, ruthless negotiation. Marcus stirred, rubbing his eyes. "Morning, sleepyhead," he mumbled, his voice thick with unearned complacency. He tried to reach for her, his arm lazily flopping over the empty space where she usually lay. Clara moved away, stepping toward the window to let the morning light brutally expose the room. "Don't touch me, Marcus." The change in her tone was immediate and jarring. Marcus sat up, his confusion quickly morphing into defensive irritation. "What the hell? What's wrong, Clara? You're acting strangely." "I am acting strangely?" Clara turned, holding his gaze with a cold, terrifying intensity he had never witnessed. "Or is it just that you're finally seeing me clearly, without the haze of your lies?" His defenses shot up instantly. "I don't know what you're talking about." He began to swing his legs out of bed. "Look, if this is about last night, I was tired." "It's not about last night. It's about the last 6 months," she cut him off, her voice low and steady, dangerously devoid of the tears he likely expected. She moved to his bedside table, her hand going straight to the watch compartment. She took the small silver key and tossed it onto the duvet. "Get dressed, Marcus. We need to talk. In the living room. Now!" He watched her leave, his face a mask of shock and dawning horror. He knew the game was over. 5 minutes later, they stood opposite each other in the cavernous living room. The morning sun illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air, a silent audience to their impending destruction. Marcus was pale, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his robe. "Where is it?" Clara asked, folded her arms. "Where's what, Clara?" "Don't insult my intelligence any further," she warned, taking a slow, deliberate step toward him. "The key you used to unlock your desk. The one you keep hidden, which, by the way, I used last night." His breath hitched. He knew the contents of that drawer. He knew she had found the locket. Clara didn't wait for him to speak. She delivered the evidence like a sequence of carefully loaded bullets. "You're spending late nights with Sarah. You're parking blocks away from her apartment. You smell like her distinct, overly expensive perfume. And you lied to me, right here at our anniversary dinner, to buy time to coordinate your story." She reached into her pocket and slammed her phone down on the glass coffee table, displaying a picture she had taken. The snap locket, the replacement photo of him and Sarah inside. "I found this," she finished, her voice finally beginning to crack with the agony that was tearing her apart. "Tell me, Marcus. Tell me you didn't cheat on your wife with her best friend." He looked at the photo, his shoulders slumping in defeat. The arrogance drained out of him, replaced by a pathetic, cringing exhaustion. The energy required to maintain the lie was too great. "Clara, I am so sorry," he whispered, the words hollow. It happened. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. A mistake." The single word was a poisonous hiss. 6 months of late meetings? That's not a mistake, Marcus. That's a choice. And the choice was Sarah. My friend, my sister, the one person I trusted more than I trusted you. He took a hesitant step toward her. "It's over, I swear. I ended it. It meant nothing, Clara, nothing compared to you, to our marriage." Clara shook her head, tears finally streaming, cold and fierce. "The marriage is dead, Marcus. You killed it. You didn't just betray me. You engineered a situation where I lost everything at once. Get out. Get out of my sight. I want you gone before I get back from the office." She did not wait for his plea or his excuses. She turned, walking toward the front door. She had to leave, not because she had to work, but because if she stayed, she knew she would burn the entire house down around them both. She didn't look back as she slammed the door shut, leaving Marcus alone in the sunlit ruins of the life they had built. She was driving before the sound of the deadbolt had faded, not to work, but anywhere the toxic scent of betrayal couldn't follow. Clara drove until the city sprawl gave way to the sharp, bracing scent of the ocean. She ended up at a small, isolated beach parking lot, the wind whipping her hair into a frenzy. For 3 hours, she sat in the car, the engine idling for the heater, watching the turbulent gray waves crash against the shore. She was functioning purely on adrenaline and a cold, protective rage. The tears had stopped, leaving her face stiff and brittle. The first thing she did was call her lawyer, bypassing the initial urge to call Sarah. Her decision was clinical, precise. "I need an immediate separation agreement drafted, Mr. Harrison. Grounds: infidelity. My husband has until 5 p.m. to clear his personal effects and establish residence elsewhere." Next, she contacted the building manager to change the security codes. Then, she opened her text thread with Sarah. The last message from Sarah, sent innocently 3 days ago, was a cat meme. "Hang in there, you've got this." Clara stared at the smiling, fluffy cat, and the full, horrifying depth of betrayal hit her anew. Sarah had been exchanging jokes while planning a life that excluded Clara entirely. Clara deleted the entire thread, without a word. No explanation, no confrontation. Just a cold, final severance of a decade of friendship. She didn't need to hear Sarah's excuses. The silence of that deleted thread spoke volumes. Sarah was dead to her. Meanwhile, Marcus was in a state of controlled panic. He had left the house as instructed, hastily packing 2 duffel bags, one with clothes, the other with his laptop and crucial files. He couldn't face the office, so he checked into a sterile corporate hotel downtown. The moment he was alone, the facade crumbled. He threw the bags onto the floor and collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the dizzying weight of his ruin. She knows. He hadn't realized how much he relied on Clara's presence, her stability, her quiet management of his life. Now, the future was a frightening, empty void. He knew he should call Sarah, but shame choked him. He hadn't ended anything with Sarah as he claimed to Clara. The affair had simply paused. He had planned to smooth things over with Clara, wait for her to cool down, and then return to Sarah, hoping to keep his marriage and his mistress. He was a coward, and now he had lost both instantly. When he finally called Sarah, his voice was tight. "Clara knows everything. I had to leave the house." On the other end, Sarah's reaction wasn't expected distress. It was an odd mix of relief and steely resolve. "I figured," she said calmly. "She hasn't replied to my messages. I'm sorry, Marcus. I truly am, but part of me is glad the secrecy is over." "Glad?" "Sarah," she found a locket, the engraved one. "She's changing the locks. She's called a lawyer. This is a disaster." "No, this is reality," Sarah countered, her voice hardening. "It was never going to be a secret forever. Look, give me a few days. I have to deal with my own guilt and maybe a tidal wave of hate from every single mutual friend we share. But this is what we wanted, isn't it? To be together?" Marcus listened, bewildered. Sarah sounded strong, decisive, entirely unlike the heartbroken, defensive person he had expected. He realized that Sarah, the one he betrayed with, was now the only one offering him any kind of lifeline. Back at the beach, Clara finally turned off the engine and watched the rain begin to fall. She wasn't thinking about Marcus. She was picturing Sarah, their shared history, the private moments of vulnerability they had exchanged over the years. The thought was a relentless hammer blow. Sarah didn't just sleep with my husband. She listened to me cry about his late nights while she was the reason he was late. The double betrayal was a perfect, self-inflicted wound, and the only path forward was absolute separation. Clara drove back to her suddenly silent house, the new security code a symbol of her singular, solitary resolve. The separate paths had begun. 6 months had passed with the cruel speed of a life suddenly and brutally reorganized. Clara had moved from the initial, agonizing numbness to a fierce, focused clarity. The separation agreement had been finalized, the house placed on the market, and the divorce proceedings were inching forward, driven by Marcus's desperate but futile attempts to minimize the financial fallout of his affair. Clara, now living in a chic, smaller apartment overlooking the city's historic district, was thriving professionally. She threw herself into her work as a museum curator, earning a significant promotion that Marcus, in his self-pity, would never truly appreciate. She had shed the weight of being Marcus's wife and emerged as simply Clara, formidable and independent. The betrayal no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a surgical removal of dead weight. The avoidance, however, was about to end. They were both required to attend an engagement party of mutual friends, David and Chloe, who, in a display of remarkable diplomacy, or perhaps denial, had insisted that both Clara and Marcus attend, albeit separately. Clara arrived exactly 10 minutes after the start time, flanked by 2 friendly, intimidating colleagues. She was wearing a stunning emerald dress, a color Marcus had always claimed made her look too serious. She caught his eye almost immediately. Marcus was huddled in a corner near the bar, looking drawn and slightly disheveled. Despite the expensive suit, the public backlash had been swift and unforgiving. Marcus's business, which relied heavily on his reputation for integrity, had suffered. Most of their mutual friends had chosen Clara, seeing him as the architect of betrayal. The biggest shock, however, was Sarah. She was there, too, standing close to Marcus, not intimately but protectively, like a human shield. Sarah's face was etched with exhaustion, her usual vibrant energy subdued. She and Marcus were together now, undeniably, yet the public spotlight had clearly scorched their romance. They had gained each other, but lost their social landscape. Clara navigated the room with practiced ease, exchanging polite greetings and deflecting concerned inquiries. She was halfway through a discussion about Byzantine art when the inevitable happened. Marcus approached her table. His hands were clasped in front of him, and he looked defeated. "Clara," he started, his voice low. "Could we talk for a minute? Outside." Clara took a deliberate sip of her champagne. "No, Marcus. We have counsel for that. If this pertains to the financial disclosures, please email my lawyer." "It doesn't. This is human. I just needed to tell you I'm sorry. For everything. I ruined everything, and I see that now. This life, it's not what I thought it would be." He glanced over his shoulder at Sarah, a gesture Clara instantly decoded as a flash of doubt about his current relationship. Clara set her glass down, her eyes clear and unclouded by pity. "You keep using the word sorry, Marcus, but I think you're just sorry about the consequences. You're sorry your reputation tanked. You're sorry you lost a house. You're sorry the easy life I built for you vanished." She leaned forward slightly. "You got exactly what you wanted. You chose Sarah. You are with her. Stop looking at me hoping for salvation. You don't get a do-over." Before Marcus could respond, Sarah intercepted the exchange. She came up behind Marcus, placing a hand on his arm, a proprietary gesture that felt offensive rather than loving. "Clara," Sarah said softly. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "I know you hate me, and you have every right. But I need to say this. I never meant to hurt you. I miss you. I miss us." This was the moment Clara had played out 100 times in her mind, the confrontation with the friend. But now that it was here, the expected rage was absent. All that remained was cold indifference. Clara looked Sarah up and down, a slow, appraising gaze. "You don't miss me, Sarah. You miss the comfortable position you held in my life. You miss the lack of consequence. You used me as a foundation for your life with Marcus, and when you decided you wanted a man too, you destroyed the foundation." She paused, delivering the final, crushing blow without raising her voice. "You're not a victim, and you're not an accidental mistress. You saw my husband in my life, and you took it, knowing the wreckage it would cause. The tragedy, Sarah, is that you took him, and you are still miserable. You ruined a decade of friendship for a relationship that clearly makes you both look exhausted and ashamed." Marcus flinched. Sarah's lips trembled, but she didn't refute the statement. The truth, hanging heavy in the air, was undeniable. Clara stood up, smoothing the emerald dress. "This conversation is over. Enjoy the party." "I know I will." She walked away, not looking back. She hadn't found closure in their apologies, but in the simple, powerful realization that their brokenness was no longer her burden. She was free. 1 year later, the divorce was finally absolute. The decree arrived on a rainy Tuesday, and Clara felt nothing but profound, quiet relief. She celebrated by opening a bottle of single malt scotch, a habit she had recently acquired, and toasting her new life. The house she and Marcus had shared was sold. The profits split cleanly, leaving Clara financially secure and emotionally unburdened. The final remnants of Marcus were fading. He had moved out of the city with Sarah, seeking a fresh start where their reputation wasn't constantly preceding them. Clara learned through mutual acquaintances that their new beginning was not the romantic escape they had envisioned. The constant strain of having sacrificed everything for each other, friends, stability, and professional standing, had curdled their intimacy into mutual resentment. Sarah had sacrificed her own burgeoning art career to follow Marcus, and now resented the isolation. Marcus, stripped of his comfortable routine, found that Sarah's intensity, which he had once found exciting, was now simply exhausting. They were trapped in the consequences of their choices, proving Clara's earlier observation. The illicit thrill had died, leaving only the complex, difficult reality of two people who had bonded over a shared lie. Clara, conversely, was flourishing. The promotion at the museum had led to a prestigious fellowship in London, a 6-month commitment that represented a complete reboot. She was packing her luggage, sorting through books and documents, when she found a small, unexpected package tucked into an old jewelry box. It was addressed simply to her, with no return address, but she recognized Marcus's cramped, familiar handwriting. Curiosity, not emotion, prompted her to open it. Inside was a thin letter and a small, antique silver key, the one from his office desk. The letter was brief, scrawled on a single sheet of paper. Clara, I found this while we were moving. I wanted you to have it. I know sorry is a meaningless word to you now, and I deserve your hatred. But I finally see the truth of what I destroyed, and I want you to know that the comfort and stability you offer was priceless. I chose poorly. I chose selfishly. I should have been honest with myself and with you long ago. I am not the man you married, and I certainly wasn't the man you deserved. Sarah and we are struggling. We build a life on a foundation of betrayal, and it shows. The world never forgets, and neither do we. Be happy, Clara. You've earned it. Marcus. Clara read the note twice, and then a third time. She felt a strange pang, not of affection or lingering love, but of quiet pity. The letter didn't evoke anger. It merely confirmed that he was finally, truly acknowledging his own personal reckoning. He was not a villain, just a fundamentally weak man who had caused catastrophic harm. She tossed the note into the shredder. The silver key, however, she held for a moment. It was the last physical symbol of the life she had shared with both him and Sarah. With a decisive movement, she walked to the balcony railing of her apartment and flung the key out over the street below. She watched the tiny silver flash descend, disappearing among the rooftops, a final, ceremonial release. That evening, Clara was meeting James, a historian she had met through her London fellowship contacts. He was witty, kind, and respected her work immensely. He represented everything Marcus was not: genuine, straightforward, and emotionally available. Their connection was slow, based on shared intellectual curiosity and mutual respect, entirely devoid of the drama that had once defined her existence. As she dressed, Clara looked at her reflection. She saw a woman who had been gutted and rebuilt, stronger and far more authentic. She no longer felt the need to perform the role of the perfect wife or the heartbroken victim. When the doorbell rang, Clara took a deep breath, smiled a real, unguarded smile, and walked toward the future. The betrayal had not been the end of her story. It had merely been the painful, necessary prologue to a new, independent life she had finally built, brick by hard-won brick. The echoes of the past had faded, replaced by the joyful, expectant rhythm of a new dawn.